Happy Monday morning, everyone. It's Psychic Medium Josh Simons coming to you and the rest of the world and whoever wants to watch this video with my Monday message. Now, it's interesting how this stuff works for me, right? Again, receiving messages, receiving guidance, receiving information, sensations and impressions, and how those things lend to experiences like this, right? For instance, for a few days now, I've known what my message is going to be this Monday. And not only is it something that was just given to me, like a memory, but it was something that kept popping up in all of the readings that I've been having lately. And I receive messages as well, right? When I'm passing through messages to folks, that wisdom in those messages, they don't come from me, they come through me. I'm just a phone line, and I'm very grateful to receive them. So here's a story, and I hope everybody is going to laugh at this with me. I've lived in northern New Hampshire, northern Vermont for my entire life. I was born here, I was raised here. I'm very proud of my working class roots. Very proud of the fact that my mom worked in factories and she was a waitress and she struggled to take care of us, because that resiliency trickles down to myself, my sister, my child. My dad was a construction worker, worked hard, right? They eventually started their own business. So a little bit of that entrepreneurship came to me. Now, I've done all sorts of things in this world. I have sold cell phones. I have been the manager of an estate for wealthy folks. I have been a carpenter. I've been a mason. I've done all sorts of things. I've worked at Home Depot. Like I said, I've sold cell phones. I've done all sorts of strange things. And all of those jobs, all of those experiences, I went through and I took something from each one of those. And I think anybody that's had a path similar to that can appreciate that. And that's why I think it's very important for everybody in this world to, one, work in retail, and two, work in the food industry. Because working in retail and working in food will teach you things about human nature you will learn nowhere else, right? My son is 17 years old. Back when he was born, a newborn, I was working here locally. For folks that are local to us, many of you will be familiar with the Mountain View Grand, and that's in Whitefield, New Hampshire. And that's a great big grand hotel right now. And for most of my childhood, it sat empty. It sat unused and empty. And a fellow from Massachusetts came along, decided to rebuild it, renovate it, and open it back up, right? Which is very great for our local economy, bringing lots of jobs, both in the construction aspect and folks who would work there after. I worked there when they were renovating it, and I was just a laborer, jackhammering holes into concrete walls and demoing walls and doing all sorts of work, right? Just grunt labor work. And I learned a lot, and I worked my butt off, and I'm proud of how much I work very hard in my life. That work soon reflected in me getting a labor foreman position. So, I was just a laborer, but I had a boss who saw what I was doing, saw my responsibility, saw that I could manage things, and then gave me a small crew of guys to manage. Part of that position was driving some equipment around the property. If you've never heard of this piece of equipment, you can Google it. It's called a lull, Lull. And it's a big piece of equipment. Like the tires, got 4 big tires, are like as tall as me. So you climb up into it, and essentially it's a giant forklift. So you're driving it, right? And over the top of it, over my head, was this arm, and the arm would extend, and you could go up and down with it and move it and twist it and do all sorts of things. And on the end of that arm were just 2 forks, and you could put things on the forks, bundles of cast iron pipes for the sprinkler system. You could pick pallets up and move it around and, boom them up to different floors and extend it so people could pull things into the building. The way, this is such a wild story, so thank you for bearing with me because I'm just blown away that this happened. The way that the demolition would work is that on the back side of the hotel, you'd have these open windows, and those windows would be in the same floor. And they would put these big demo dumpsters out there, right? So the trucks would come and pick up the dumpster and back it up. Once it was, put an empty one in its spot, so it had to go perpendicular to the building. And these dumpsters would go under the same window. So first floor window, second floor window, third floor window, those windows were all removed, and those were the rooms that you would take the junk, right? The boards, the plaster, the nails, the glass, all of those things from the demolition. You'd bring it, you'd throw it in carts, you'd bring it to those rooms, and you'd dump them out into the dumpster. But those were also the windows that you would pull stuff into the building. So I would drive the low, and I would have these guys in the building, and this day that this thing happened to me, I was driving pallets of sheetrock mud and booming it up to different windows. Sheetrock mud, put the mud on the sheetrock joints so you can paint it, walls, all of that construction stuff. So here I am doing my thing, and I ended up being very good on the low. I somehow had great hand-eye coordination, thank you video games, and appreciated driving it. It was fun, there was challenges, and I love overcoming challenges. So I'm driving this piece of machinery. Now picture it, right? We have the building and, the windows on the building, and then we have the dumpster, right? Now I'm on the back side of the dumpster, right? I'm over here, and I'm booming stuff up to the building. So I grab a pallet of sheetrock compound, and there's guys up in the building pulling it off the pallet. So I boom it up to the boom the pallet up to the window, and there's guys up there pulling the buckets off. And once the pallet's empty, I go and get another one, bring it up, and so I do this. I do it on the second floor, and they're pulling it in, and all of that, right? And then I go get a pallet for the third floor, and I drive it, and I start booming it. And, the machine has a level. So, you're looking out a windshield, and then there's a little level up here, and you can see if the machine's level. Now, when you're booming things up like that, the machine should be level. So I was actually on a perpendicular slope. Well, not perpendicular, but just a slope. And, the machine was tilted, and there was a control in the machine that you could use the hydraulics to make the machine level. So I pull in there, make the machine level, and I start booming this pallet of sheetrock compound up to the third floor window. And I'm watching it, I'm looking at the windshield, and I'm watching it go up, go up, go up. And then as the pallet starts to go up, I can all of a sudden, in relation to the building, see it start to go like this, right? Start to lower. And I'm like, are my hydraulics giving out? Something's going on, and I had no idea what was going on. All of a sudden, I'm sorry. All of a sudden, the the lull goes boom. I hate to laugh about. I can laugh about this in hindsight. Physics, right? I had extended that heavy pallet of sheetrock compound too far out that the guys on the third floor, they're standing there, and then all of a sudden, right, once I get to that point, the back tires lifted up, and now I'm in the lull. The pallet of sheetrock compound slammed into the second floor window. Nobody was there, right? But it slammed into that part of the building, and the back tires of this piece of machinery are 8-10 feet off the ground, right? Because the machine's boom. Here I am in this machine, holding on to the steering wheel, facing down, holding on, right? And I'm like, what's going on? Oh, what's going on? I had a boss, a supervisor. His name was Dennis. Dennis was the coolest guy in the world. He was from Texas, and this company in Massachusetts that was renovating the Mountain View Grand got this guy up here, right? And he was the coolest dude in the world. He was a cowboy. He was, he had cowboy boots. He had a ponytail, cowboy hat, kind of out of place in northern New Hampshire, yes. But he was cool as a cucumber, right? He was funny. He was a good guy, and nothing ever seemed to bother him. Things going wrong, things happening, wasn't bothered at all, right? Like, okay. So he's around and he sees what happens because there's all sorts of cars and all sorts of contractors and people doing all sorts of things. So obviously a big piece of machinery slams into the building. He runs right over and he runs up to me and he's on the other side of the machine and he's like, "Don't jump out. Whatever you do, stay in there." And that was a lesson that I learned about machinery, right? If there's something wrong with machinery, well, you stay in it. You don't jump out because the thing could fall on you and kill you, right? And again, I laugh about this. So I'm holding on to the wheel, right? And I'm in there. And he's like, "All right, this is what we're gonna do." Dennis is like, "This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna get the guys to go from the third floor down to the second floor, and they're gonna start pulling out the sheetrock compound, right? They're gonna start pulling out the sheetrock compound." And they do that. And he's like, "Listen, there's gonna be one bucket that they pull off of that pallet, and everything's gonna shift." He's like, "You gotta be ready for it." So they cleared everybody out because he knew what was going to happen. They cleared everybody out, moved all the trucks, moved all the cars, moved all the people, right? Because they knew what was going to happen. And here's what did happen. He was right. They're down there on the second floor pulling in these buckets of sheetrock compound. They pull off one bucket of sheetrock compound. And was just, the amount of weight that it took. So the back tires of this machine went boom. Now what happens is all of these buckets of sheetrock compound, they're loose, right? So this became a slingshot or a catapult. A catapult is a better way to put it. So the tires slam down, the pallet of sheetrock compound goes whoosh, and then all of a sudden you have, I don't know how much a 5-gallon bucket of sheetrock compound weighs, maybe 50, 60 pounds, 40 pounds, something like that. All of a sudden you have buckets of sheetrock compound flung into the air. I don't know how far up they went. They went really far. And then they're falling all over, exploding. They're exploding, right? You can see them like all over the place. Now, I'm laughing now because it's 17, 18 years later, but I was terrified. I was terrified, right? And of course, I'm like, well, boom, the tires slam down, sheetrock compound goes everywhere. So I get out, right? Everything's fine. The machine was shut off. I'm shaking. I'm like, oh my gosh, adrenaline going through me. I'm freaking out. Now, Dennis wasn't around anymore because he knew what was going to go on and he didn't want to get hit by these buckets of sheetrock compound. So he tore out of there. And as soon as I could get out of that machine, I went to find him, right? I went to find him, and the first thing I said to him was, "Dennis, if you want to fire me, I completely understand. I'll get in my car and I'll leave right now. I get it, right? I messed up and I'm super sorry. You want to fire me? I'm gone." And he laughs at me and he goes, "No, I want you to get back in that machine and I want you to drive it right now." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yes." And in his Texas drawl and his accent, he says, "When a horse throws you, boy, you get back on it." I'll tell you, that stayed with me forever. I bring this story to you, right, today because something that I've been feeling often in my own life and in the lives of, a lot of people that I've been giving readings to. Fear dictates a lot in our life. There's all sorts of responses to fear in this world, right? Fear of being rejected, fear of not being accepted, fear of failure, fear of, poverty, fear, right? And I think it was in Dune the movie, Dune the science fiction novel, where they said fear is the mind killer. That's very accurate. I'm 41, going to be 42 in March, and I'll tell you, it's interesting. Over the past year, I've sat with how my reactions to things, when I get angry at things, It all results and it all stems from a fear reaction. And this is just a matter of degree. Not everybody walks around scared. But I'm a gay guy, right? In the middle of rural New England. I knew I was gay when I was 3, 4 years old, and I knew that I couldn't bring that to people. And I would have that fear, right? Fear of being hurt, fear of being rejected, fear of my family not loving me, all of those things. Eventually I got over it. But it's interesting how fear can affect us. The worry, right? What's the opposite of fear? That's my question to you. What is the opposite of fear? I believe it's faith. Not bravery, not courage. I think the opposite of fear is faith. Faith in ourselves, right? And yes, we do all have helping spirits and ancestors and loved ones that are around us. But faith. Do you have faith in yourself? I sat with a woman this week, powerful, strong, accomplished, and yet she was just as guilty of feeling fear as everyone. You know, and as a business owner, you run numbers all the time, right? Running numbers, making sure that you're bringing more in than it's going out. That's how you run a business, essentially. And she'd had a business for 17 and a half years. And, oh, funny, 17 and a half years. That's as old as my kid is, and that's right around the time that this thing with the lull happened. So that's an interesting coincidence. And yet, she'd been through things like COVID and economic downturns and crisis and being evicted. I don't know if she's ever evicted, but I think there were building issues for her, and she had to move her store from one place to another. Whatever that is, right? She had overcome challenges, and yet she was still worried. She still had fear. And the point of her reading was like, listen, when are you going to have faith in yourself? When are you going to understand that really, no matter what is presented to you, no matter what kind of challenge or obstacle that you face, you get around it. You get through it. You get over it. I know that's not applicable to everybody in this world, right? Because sometimes people don't have that chutzpah. But that's where we gain so much from remembering our ancestors, remembering our beloved dead, remembering the spirits around us, because their strength lives in you. You're here because of strong people. Doesn't mean they were righteous or good or virtuous. And I'll say that over and over again. If you're in this world, in this moment, you had strong ancestors. You have their strength. And yet be cautious about fear, because everybody feels it to one extent or another, right? When are you going to have faith in yourself? When are you going to stop fearing things? And that's probably the hardest thing that we'll ever do in this world, is to get rid of that fear. I am actively working on it because I actively understand that my responses to this world, things that make me angry, things that make me upset, come from a fear reaction. I'm learning to have faith in myself. And I look, I've been in business for myself, had a marketing business. Now Isaac and I have this business. I kicked ass, right? And that's not from a place of ego or conceit. That's just understanding that I have attributes that were given to me by my family. A hard work ethic, right? Entrepreneurial spirit, perseverance. And I should have faith in myself. So things will happen, right? You might drive a lull the wrong way, and you might end up sending buckets of sheetrock compound up into the air and back down again. But when the horse throws you, get back on it, right? We're all gonna mess up in this world. We're all gonna fail, right? At some things, and yet no matter what, you get back on the horse. If it threw you, you get back on it. You get back on it, and then when you do that, when you continue to persevere, eventually you'll have faith in yourself. Have faith in yourself. Stop being so damn scared all the time. That's my message to you this week. Look at the kind of fear reactions that you have. And Lord knows we've seen it, especially this political season, right? I mean, politicians are really good at exploiting fear. Media is really good at exploiting fear, right? I mean, Democrats, gotta vote for us because the Republicans are scary. Republicans, gotta vote for us because the Democrats are scary, right? Fear is just a control mechanism, and we're all guilty of being exposed to it. So look at your fear reactions and see how you can mitigate them and manage them and minimize them. And no matter what, when the horse throws you, get back up on it. Have a wonderful week.